Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some comments that Nikki Haley made as far as it's really causing waves. Some people are saying it's an epic sort of meltdown as far as policy positions, but she wants to just, I guess, erase um, the sort of privacy online you can have when you have like an anonymous account because she wants to get rid of bots and hold people accountable to their speech. And then I understand that, but I also understand that there's people who go on the internet, on social media, and want their privacy because there's literally people, if you say like a man is a man and a woman is a woman, that they could lose their jobs. So and considering how government has misused their powers and really overstepped boundaries in the past couple of years regarding free speech and what people say online, this is making a lot of people really uncomfortable. So I want to talk about her comments and she, I don't know if walk back is the right kind of word. She maybe flip flop a little bit on something, but they doubled down on the comments at least last night. So we'll talk about that. Also, want to talk about this horrific murder of this young man who was in Las Vegas, who was jumped by like 15 young men, and the police have arrested 8 different children. They're all minors who did it, from the ages of, like, I think they said 13 to 17 maybe. All minors, but just crazy what happened. Maybe you guys have already seen it online. I don't know how much of mainstream is talking about it. I know like Fox and some other people have mentioned it, and people are talking about it on TikTok. But yeah, the kid he looks like a white kid and beaten by a crowd of black kids. So, and I don't think it was some people were saying it was racial or hate crime. I don't know if it was like, oh, let's get whitey, but just really horrific. And I just have a message to parents with these kids, like, you gotta do something. You have to instill within your children right and wrong, and maybe you think that you are doing that, but there's some children who are really going to mess up their lives by choosing aggression and choosing evil and to act in these particular ways. And I say it all the time, like, people say this life matter, that lives matter, black lives matter. Your life has to matter. You have to make good decisions for yourself so you can give yourself the best options for your future. And you have to instill within your children to have respect, not only for authority but for their fellow man, because this is how you get situations like this. I'm not saying that they meant to kill this young man, but the sort of violence that they thrusted upon him can obviously happen quickly, especially and get lethal, especially to the amount of people who were doing it. And now you have a case where this young man is dead and other young men are going to probably go to jail or should go to jail. We'll see what happens um, with the actual court cases and so on. But just really tragic all the way around, and evil, really, really evil. And also I want to talk about this video with Mike Johnson. He was being interviewed on I think it's CNBC, and asked about him praying on the House floor, and he gave an answer to it, unashamed. But it seemed like such a weird question to me. But so I want to walk through and go through it. But before I jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here at blacktnews.com, please check out. Well, besides going on the website, check out the stuff. If you would like what I do here, you can support by going to the donate page, because it does cost stream. We're on my website, all that stuff. If you are watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. So if you can do that, I thank you very much for doing that. Otherwise, you guys can go directly to the website and give in that way as well. Check out different merch that we have at the site, like the "You Are Not That Special." I also have those in mugs as well. I also have this shirt, "The Constitution is a Glorious Liberty Document," which, by the way, that's from the Frederick. I wore that yesterday on the show, but this is from the speech. What is the 4th of July to a slave, or to what? It's something like that. I'm maybe rearranging the words a little oddly, but that's where that line is from. And it's a really good speech if you've never read it yourself. But I was thinking about it today because someone um, on TikTok called me like Steven from Django, and I'm just like, bro, Steven is a Democrat. And but they want to go the route of like, oh no, the conservatives are the ones who are the racist or whatever, and because they'll say party switched or whatever, but we know that that racist Democrats didn't just suddenly become, racist Republicans. If you look through like who actually switched and who didn't, maybe you find like two people, but like Strom Thurmond, maybe somebody else, but racist Democrats, were against civil rights, all that stuff. They died as racist Democrats. So and the South became, more Republican eventually, which is like really recent, maybe not recent to you if you're like, I don't know, 18 or something. It doesn't seem very recent to you, but if you've lived long enough to remember the 90s pretty well and other stuff, the South, southern states, they didn't consistently start, voting red until fairly recently. So but as the South became less racist and got more economic opportunities, that's when the South became more Republican and stuff. But as far as um, conservatism and stuff, conservatives do want to conserve particular values, Judeo-Christian values. We don't like changing the Constitution too much. So there was a debate about changing the Constitution and all that stuff, but they did. But Frederick Douglass, he was of the opinion that some people will say the Constitution is for slavery. He didn't have that opinion, and he mentioned in his speech that he thought that was a point that Republicans surrendered too easily, and he called the Constitution a glorious liberty document and went through it. So it's a really good speech. I don't remember all that section from the top of my head, but I was thinking about it today, so maybe I don't know, do a TikTok replying to that guy a bit or something and refresh my memory on what Frederick Douglass said. But he had an interesting take, and he was a very wise man who was very courageous, obviously. But anyway, that shirt's at the store. Check out different books and stuff that I have to sell as well. If you go to blacktnews.com and go to the merchandise page, you'll be able to find, my books and so on. Like, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But go ahead and check it out. Anyway, I do have something funny to start off the day with. Now, I don't. It's not like a laugh out loud kind of funny. um Maybe it will be for you. Sorry if I'm tampering it, but maybe it's totally fine if you laugh out loud with this. To me, it's more like this is obviously humor, and it you know makes sense, and there's truth to it, but it's obviously a parody, and I think it's a a bit on the nose parody, but it's a good parody with the BBC. So if you've been on social media today, maybe you've seen it making the rounds. So before I play it, I'm going to go back to this BBC interview that I played earlier this week, just so you kind of know what's going on with the BBC and their responses and how they're covering the war in Gaza. So here is one interview that was pretty crazy.
Because it's a convenient response, isn't it? That every time there is an Israeli strike on some sort of facility inside Gaza, you just tell us that Hamas is operating there, and that's why you're fighting back. We understand that.
I'm sorry.
The UN here, though, is saying that its facility, the UN, internationally recognised body, the UN says that its facility in Gaza was attacked by your forces overnight, and this morning reporting a significant number of deaths. The point is that is in contravention of international humanitarian law, and people need somewhere that is safe to go if you are telling them to evacuate from the north of Gaza.
I have to push back because the insinuation in your question is that Israel takes pleasure at taking pot shots at civilian facilities.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that every response you make to my suggestion that you are targeting people when they are trying to find somewhere safe to go is that you tell me Hamas is operating there. This is a UN facility.
Ben, Hamas has spent the last 16 years embedding itself underneath civilian areas in Gaza, building its headquarters under the hospital, exploiting ambulances, putting its own, our troops have just discovered rocket launchers and weapon silos inside schools, inside classrooms, next to children's bedrooms.
So that justifies attacking those targets, even though there are, as we've seen this morning, babies in the hospital. We've seen that innocent civilians are in the UN facilities.
And we are doing everything we can, going above and beyond our obligations under international law to get civilians out of harm's way. We are fighting Hamas like the world. 86 nations came together to destroy ISIS. Now, I don't remember British troops being on the ground in Mosul and Raqqa, helping to facilitate civilians to get out of harm's way while ISIS terrorists were firing RPGs at them. But that is what our soldiers are doing. We are going above and beyond our obligations under international law to keep civilians safe. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a ruthless enemy that aims to maximize casualties on its own side in order to produce the sorts of images that gain it international sympathy and then would get pressure on Israel to stop defending itself and stop dismantling the terror state that perpetrated the October 7th massacre and is actively planning another one.
Yeah, so BBC with their oh, it's so convenient when we talk about military targets and you killing, civilians dying. You're always saying that, oh, we were hitting military targets and they use them as human shields. And he didn't quite say it like that, but it was just a pretty remarkable interview. So this parody is circulating around today. That's pretty funny.
Good evening from London. 39 days after Hamas freedom fighters peacefully attacked Israel, we have now an exclusive interview with its leader, Yahya Sinwar.
Yes, good evening, Rachel. Let me just correct you. Oh. There were also freedom rapists and freedom butchers.
Of course, I apologize. Mr. Sinwar, I understand that you are now working towards a ceasefire.
Yes, Rachel, you know me. Wherever there is fire, I say, let's seize it. All we are saying is give ceasefire a chance.
The fire must be seized.
Yeah, the situation in Gaza is terrible, Rachel. All innocent civilians are running out of town, so we are left without protection.
With no human shield at all. So unfair.
So unfair. And our hospitals, Rachel, our schools all run out of rockets. Oh. How are we supposed to kill Jews like this? I mean, with lectures?
Actually, we've tried that one. Didn't work.
I plead to the world. We need a ceasefire. We are tired. We need a break. Don't forget, we started a day earlier than the Israeli.
So unfair. But I understand the Zionists refuse to put down the weapons.
Yes. Can you imagine? All we want is a little time to rearm before we continue to kill them, and they won't let us.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sinwar. I can't hear you. All this noise in the background.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rachel. There is a baby here.
Could you please get him to be quiet?
Yeah, I wish I could. is not mine, and his mother is in Israel. Never mind.
Okay, look, it's really hard to conduct an interview with this noisy kidnapped baby. Is he always like that?
At night, it's even worse, Rachel. Every time we fire a rocket, he wakes up.
Oh, no.
I didn't have one good night sleep in a month.
Wait, are you telling me that there is an Israeli baby that's torturing you by sleep deprivation?
Yes!
Occupying your house?
Yes!
So unfair, so unfair. And the world does absolutely nothing about it. I really hope you'll get a ceasefire soon. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinwar.
No. Thank you, Rachel.
And now, please stay with us for a moment of history.
On this day in 1944, heartless Winston Churchill refused a ceasefire and continued the genocidal attack on Nazi Germany. As we well know now, far more German civilians have died in the war, which makes them the victims and Britain the war criminal.
Yep. Pretty solid ending there. Which, by the way, I was in the car last night listening to a TikTok live and stuff. They've arranged the app so you can like listen kind of like you would on YouTube. Like you kind of turn it off and it'll still like be playing and stuff. So, I was listening. I think the page was like moderate Democrat or something. So they were the host, the moderate Democrat, was like pro-Israel, and they had a couple different people on. There's one woman who was like who was British, and she said she had a lot of Palestinian friends, and she would not believe that the hospital, which was occupied by Hamas, which isn't new information. I mean, people have reported that for years, but people don't want to believe it. Listening to that conversation and many other that I've had or listened to, I'm like, some people just don't want to know the truth at all. But at one point, she started. She's very loud and would talk over people, but I think there's a lot of people, so they would talk over each other at times. But at one point, she just starts yelling, "You are occupying the conversation. You are occupying the conversation just like Israel is occupying." And it was a lot. And I'm like, what is wrong? What is going on? With the BBC, what is going on with some of these people? And they refuse to like they're like, the US, other countries has confirmed the intelligence with Hamas operating out of hospitals, and she didn't want to believe that, but she wouldn't. She believed all the death counts, and they're like, how did Hamas count all the bodies? And they're like, well, they didn't count them. The health ministry counted them. I'm like, are you serious, ma'am? Like, the health ministry, that's basically just saying like Hamas controls stuff. Like, it's really crazy. Excuse me. So it was quite a night just listening to those conversations. Really wacky. Anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about Nikki Haley a bit, and some of the conversations that she's been having or people have been calling her out for. Before I get to the speech issue, I want to talk about this snippet she said about Vivek.
What happens? He comes out of the gate, he hits the female chair of the party, he hits the female anchor on the platform, and then he hits me. And I'm not saying anything.
I ain't saying, I'm just saying.
But he might have a girl problem. I'm just saying he might have a girl problem.
Yeah, so Nikki Haley there, she leans into being the woman a little too much. I know people on the right like to pretend like they're not into identity politics like the left is, and they're not in in it as much, but they do lean into it sometimes. Like I've mentioned before how one night I went to my local Republican Party, which I hadn't been in a minute, but I had been there a lot. You know, I had run for office. People were very familiar with me, but this particular person who was there didn't recognize me. So I came in and they're just like, oh, like so excited. And because a black person was there, and then they're like, come sit with your friends. I'm like, how do you know I know this person? They too were black. But yeah, people they are like overly excited when there is a minority, when it doesn't look like it's just a white man room or whatever. Which, by the way, when I went up to a Democrat Party picnic, they talked about how they have sometimes their stuff isn't diverse enough too, so they can talk about people on the right, but they feel it's that way with their side as well, just FYI. But there are times definitely when people on the right are excited, like, oh, we got this black person running. You can't tell me people were excited about John James running in Michigan, you know. Um, and not just people in Michigan, people all over the world, all over the country, who were excited about him, and etc. So we lean into it too, and people get excited for a woman, and Nikki Haley is the only, like, woman running for president right now, and so she's leaning into it quite a bit, and she's made some comments, like on the first debate stage, they asked a question and everybody answered, but they didn't really answer the question. And she's like, this is how you know the difference between men and women, or something. Like, they didn't answer the question, I'm gonna answer the question. Which, that's not exactly what she said, but it's something along those lines. um she makes it known that she is the woman. She's gonna do different things, do things differently, has that woman's touch, mother's touch, etc. And I get it. But going after Vivek and saying that comment, you guys know, if you follow me enough, I'm not too fond of Vivek, but um, saying he has a girl problem because he went after Ron at the last debate, and then went after Kirsten, the news anchor, and then went after Nikki Haley. Perhaps he went after Rana because Rana is the chair of the RNC. We talked about this the other day. He got the idea from Benny Johnson. So it wasn't even like an original idea so much, but he went after Rana because we just had a bunch of failures. And so the base is going to eat that up. So he said that stuff. So he went after Rana. He went after the media also, so the base could eat that up. And, Russia hoax, collusion, blah, blah, blah. Said that he had a very viral moment. And Kirsten is the one who, asking the question. She was a woman sitting right there. And then he went after Haley, which he actually went after Haley and DeSantis too, because he made a remark about, I don't know how many people caught this, but I think the DeSantis portion of the insult kind of went under radar, and I've only seen a couple people mention it, like on Twitter here or there, but he made a comment about warmongers and heels or something like that, and he mentioned that two heels, or two pairs of heels. Obviously one is Nikki Haley because she's a woman and she wears heels. So who's the other pair of heels? If you are not aware, excuse me, if you are not aware, because maybe you're not chronically online, people have been wondering if Ron DeSantis wears lifts in his boots to appear taller, and we've talked about this a little bit, but there's a lot of other substantive conversations we could be having about policy and stuff, but those are the sorts of hits that the Trump memesters like to go after. So people have been talking about those boots a lot. I'm not a big fan of his boots. So he says he's 5'11". People say that he's wearing lifts in his shoes, and he's probably shorter. They say that even because he admits he's 5'11", that he's probably shorter, because people who are really 5'11" actually just say that they're 6 feet, which I don't think that's true. Maybe it's true for some men, but his military records say that that he's 5'11". Why would he lie about being taller than 5'11" if there are people who are going to dog on him for not actually being 6 feet? So I don't know. I I asked my sister, who's seen him in person, met him in person and stuff, like how tall he is. And so she is about 5'8". We're about the same height ish, but we're like 5'8", some a little bit. We're not 5'9". But she says she remembered being taller than him, wearing her heels. So, maybe 5'11" isn't too off, but maybe he's a little shorter, like 5'10" and a quarter or something like that. I don't know. Um, but it has been a little obsession. So he didn't just ding Haley on the heels. He also clearly was digging at DeSantis. But it didn't quite make that the mark or whatever, and nobody really acknowledged it. Like DeSantis didn't acknowledge it, and no one else seemed to. But I caught that. I don't know if anyone else really caught that besides a couple people who mentioned it online. But to me, that insult kind of fell flat regarding him. But then Nikki Haley responded back with some comment about, I wear my heels, they're not for fashion, they're for their ammunition. And so many women I saw online were like, what does that mean? What do you mean your heels are for ammunition? We don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to us. So that was her trying to be that feisty female, empowered, rah rah, but it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. So I think Nikki Haley, I mean, I've noticed something that this, when you hear DeSantis on the debate stage talking about stuff, he's talking about what what he's accomplished as a governor, not just what he wants to do, but it's, well, things, he addresses things he wants to do, but he will always relate it back to what he's already done. Like, hey, we got this crime, all this stuff going on. George Soros, deport all this money into these people, and that's one of the reasons why crime is bad. That's why in Florida I did this. I removed this Soros prosecutor and this Soros DA or whatever. Like, whatever. He keeps relating stuff to what he's accomplished. And I don't hear Nikki Haley talk a lot about her accomplishments, and she was a governor. A lot of people didn't pay a lot of attention to her until, I guess she was with the UN and stuff, but she had a whole career before that. So, is that because she doesn't have, quite as strong as a record? Like when the other governors, Burgum and stuff, were on stage, they talked a lot about what they did in their states too. So, I feel like she kind of has a different gimmick than the one that DeSantis is going to. DeSantis is like, here is my record, I did the thing. And she's making a different appeal. But if she's going to lean heavily into that woman thing, it didn't work for Hillary, and Dems love them some identity politics. Hillary, implied that Bernie Sanders was sexist, the way that he would, go at her and stuff, which people are like, really? Now Bernie has some interesting writings from the past that maybe lend credibility to some of those. He wrote some weird stuff that certainly would have been talked about if he was the nominee. But most people were just, that fell flat. That criticism of Bernie, and people dismissed it, and there are reasons to be annoyed with Vivek, but saying he's picking on the girls, he has a girl problem, just ain't it. It just ain't it. There's especially when you can see rational reasons for why he went, okay, I'm attacking I'm criticizing the chair of the RNC, not because she's a woman, but because she has had there's been failure after failure after failure, and not only that, but she is still in charge right now, and we just had a failure. So yeah, I'm pointing the finger at somebody. It's got to be somebody's fault. So he didn't want to point the finger at Trump or anything, so he wanted to point, he really didn't answer the question. He just hijacked it for his viral moment, and he said, went after Rana, he went after Kristen, who's sitting right there asking the questions, and he eventually got to Haley. And Nikki Haley and Vivek do not have a love affair, obviously. And they've had some back and forth. It's very clear that she doesn't like him too much, and that he can get under her skin. And at times when she shut him down, it's been, like a stern talking to, and other times he didn't get the better of that exchange, but she's rattled, or didn't have a great response, whatever. So, yeah, she needs to stop that. Just knock that off. The woman thing, like, we get it. We can see you have boobs, like. We know what a woman is. Like, you don't have to keep reminding us that your heels have ammunition in them. So just knock it off. Knock it off. And just stick to substantive stuff and your record and what you can do. And for the country. But anyway, more important things that she mentioned that are sending people awry is this comment that she made regarding the privacy of individuals on the internet.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
Yeah, someone in the comments said it looks like I could use some black tea right now. I did have some tea before I started, but yeah, I'm still a little under the weather. Past couple days now I got to tickle my throat. I'm just gonna go ahead and play the next clip so you guys don't hear me coughing. I'm sorry. But she doubled down in her comments. So it's not like it was I don't know, just a brief lapse of judgment.
They need to verify every single person on their outlet and I want it by name. Because when
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then, and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name.
Yeah. So she did double down in that. So with the wanting people's actual names and stuff. There's and I've heard Jordan Peterson and other people say, I don't know how stern of opinion he still has on that, because people really did push back on his opinion of that. If everyone's name had to be out front and they had to stand by what they were saying, would the internet look very differently? Would with social media look very different? I think so. Because if people can hide behind, an egg or a blocked out sort of person figure or a meme or something, and they can say whatever they want, a lot of people have courage when they know that they're not going to get confronted in real life, face any kind of consequences, be punched in the face, they'll say all kinds of stuff. And if you can, people who wouldn't dare say something to you up front in real life, they have a whole bunch of courage while they're behind, a wall of privacy on the internet. So would the discourse be more polite? Perhaps. Well, certainly, I think so. Would we be maybe a little less free, I guess, because there's still outside consequences to how you speak. So there'd be a lot of people who'd be afraid to voice their opinions that they feel free to voice online. It's not just a fact. And I'm not just talking about, there's a lot of people who say really disgusting and terrible things out there that we prefer not to see. But there are people who just work normal jobs and want to say something like men are men and women are women, and they're not interchangeable, and just because you put on a dress and a wig doesn't make you a woman. Saying something like that, people would fear that they would lose their jobs. And that seems like a really crazy thing. That our world would be in that kind of place. Unfortunately, it kind of is right now. Someone had told me that some different rules with their job and different federal funds and regulations or whatever that's associated with their profession. If they say anything that they could risk, losing their license and stuff. And I was just like floored, but that's just the world we live in, unfortunately, under the Biden administration. And when you take power, it's important to know how to wield it, I guess, correctly, but it's also important to understand what will happen once you lose it. Democrats, they don't mind expanding government and seizing power and using it to do as they please. And the question is always like, well, what happens when the other side wins? Like when Harry Reid, wanted to, change stuff with the voting or whatever. There's like, we're gonna do, like, one day we'll do the same thing. And so they ended up lowering the threshold for judicial appointments, so it was just a majority, and they cited it as like the Harry Reid rule or whatever. And that's why Trump was able to get who he wanted through the Supreme Court, and etc. And it that didn't play well eventually with the Democrats, but they opened that door so other people took that door. So what goes around comes around. So we know that our government was working with social media companies and pressuring them to silence free speech of things that were true. Things that were true, particularly regarding like the COVID situation, the pandemic, vaccines, and all that kind of stuff. And they censored doctors and all sorts of different things because they didn't want certain people to hear their ideas, and because they wanted the population to act a particular way. It didn't matter what truth was, they wanted particular behaviors achieved. So if you just say it's important for us to have all of this information and the social media companies, because you're causing more interaction between the government and more cooperation with and more demands with the government and these social media companies. And to think that it's just going to be like, oh, we just want to make sure that we stop the Chinese, we just want to make sure that we stop the Russians. But what the problem is, that I understand the government being concerned about foreign threats, and we should always be concerned about foreign threats. But as Americans, we should always be concerned about our government. That's what we're founded on, the idea that we should have a healthy distaste and distrust of the government. That's why both sides should fear the government getting too large, and we should not have to feel like it's a life or death situation every single election of who's going to be the president or not. It should be like, we should be concerned about like, what are they going to do about foreign policy and other stuff like that? Because, but as far as like our domestic situation every day, like we should be concerned that one person, at that top position in the White House is going to so radically, dramatically infect our lives and do such harm. That should not be our reality. But the government is too invasive, and it's too darn big. And I don't think Haley got that memo. I don't think she got that memo. So, so saying like, I want everyone to be identified. And I'm not saying that in some circumstances that I don't agree with that. There was a big discussion between Matt Walsh and some libertarians a couple of years back, maybe it was about 3 years ago now, that it was like the internet was just exploding because he was talking about how many young people get addicted to we'll call it popcorn, but I think you guys, it's naughty stuff. So I don't know, I guess I'll just say pornography. If it's flagged, it's flagged. So at a very young age, which, if you're that young, he's like, how can you really consent to that? And so he wanted more done online to be able to stop that from happening. And so he's talking about, or suggested, or other people suggested, and he, like having some kind of verification, verification or whatever, not just you click and you say you're 18 or whatever. And the libertarians and other folks were like, no, you can't do that, etc. Blah blah blah. Like, so I agree with Matt on that. So we'll have to, if you disagree with that, we can get into a conversation about that another day. But I'm just mentioning, like, there some circumstances where I can see where you might want to validate to protect someone like that, but just the internet is too mean. There's too many bots. So we have to if that's your reasoning, that's not enough. People are saying like she's a walking, talking Patriot Act. That's just not enough. And she said day one. It's funny when people, I know everyone like says on day one we will do this. People do have to have a plan, but when you say day one and you make it known that that's such a top priority, that concerns people, because if you not trusting the citizens, or trying to curb their behavior in that kind of way, and making this strong alliance between the government and the social media companies, this necessity, if that's your like top priority day one, what's gonna happen on day two? What's gonna happen on day two? We should be concerned, I think, pretty concerned about what's gonna happen later. So the idea that that they want to make sure that they want to know these algorithms are, they want to make sure that they're not just pumping particular propaganda. Like, people are very upset about how many young people on TikTok are espousing anti-Jewish rhetoric and the pro Palestinian, pro Hamas kind of attitudes or whatever, and how skewed it is for young people. And like, oh, look at TikTok, they're the one pushing this stuff out. And the algorithm does show you a lot of what you want to see. Now, is it true maybe they're suppressing some people? I know that they're suppressing my account right now. So perhaps there's it's true that they're purposely suppressing some stuff and pushing some other stuff, but it could be true that a lot of young people do feel that way. I mean, if you're a group of young people and you see other people in your clique talking about this stuff, there's people who obviously don't know much about the topic, but their friends feel strongly about it, and they're using words like indiscriminate bombings and apartheid and genocide. And so someone else repeats it and someone else repeats it, and they see you liking something and commenting, and they're like, okay, they like this video, they're commenting on this video, they're using this hashtag, we're going to keep showing them these videos. And then that just keeps exploding, and it's in that demographic. So maybe there's some kind of grand conspiracy to it, but maybe it's just the fact that your kids are listening to some bad sort of uninformed influences, and they just keep rallying and talking, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. Similar stuff probably with the trans stuff. Like in China has, their version of TikTok is a very tailored, more educational sort of thing. They'll show them like STEM and educational things. So they purposely wouldn't let stuff like that flow. But unfortunately, America is a very weird place right now, and the Chinese do not have any incentive to make us less weird and more depraved, or any less depraved. So, they will let our funky algorithm do the work, for sure. And unfortunately, they are showing people what they want to see, what they are interacting with. Sometimes you have to learn not, and then you might see something that's wrong, and you're like, let me interact with that and let me debunk that. And maybe you'll get a lot of views from debunking that or interacting with that, but you are still elevating that thing. So it is like a double-edged sword. It's just how the social media works. So I don't know how much she knows about it, or how much she assumes she knows about it and how to fix it. But people are concerned about her take. So Ron DeSantis had retweeted the video from Fox the first one I showed you of Nikki on this topic, and he said, you know who were anonymous writers back in the day? Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison, when they wrote the Federalist Papers, they were not national security threats, nor are the many conservative Americans across the country who exercise their constitutional right to voice their opinions without fear of being harassed or canceled by the school they go to or the company they work for. Haley's proposal to ban anonymous speech online, similar to what China recently did, is dangerous and unconstitutional. It will be dead on arrival in my administration. So that's what Ron DeSantis said in response to Nikki Haley. And again, I understand that there's people who really feel like they cannot speak just even common sense true things, or they will be belittled and kicked off the internet, or not just kicked off the internet, but like really face repercussions, like financial repercussions in real life. One time I was at a Trump rally, and I was going around outside. It was raining, and I had my umbrella in one hand, camera in the other, but I wanted to get this particular video. Just talking about what make America great again means to them. And so I went up to these group of kids, and I guess they were adults, young adults, but and asked if they would do an interview, and they're like, sure. And like, wait a second, is this gonna go viral? And I'm like, I would like it to, sure. And they're like, no, we can't do that. We go to University of Michigan. We can't do that, which is in Ann Arbor, which is in a pretty liberal city. And that, I've heard a lot of stories about stuff going on in Ann Arbor. That's where my dad went to school. So that, breaks my heart. That people felt like they couldn't be interviewed because they didn't want to face those kind of social repercussions or educational repercussions or whatever from just, saying what they think that line means, and people said, like, restoring our respect in the world, faith in God, getting the economy back on track, not a bunch of, racist stuff that people are saying. That's why I wanted to make the video to counter the accusations from the left. So I majorly encourage people to be brave enough to speak out on things, because I feel like the things that I talk about and the things that I say are not such uncommon beliefs. I think people just maybe don't hear it all the time, because a lot of people, one, maybe don't know how to articulate it, but two, are perhaps too nervous or shy to say something, or even afraid. Or there could be people, just apathetic and don't care enough to like debate or talk about or whatever. But I encourage people to say these things, because once you know that you're not alone, people feel more comfortable talking about it. And some people just hold on to their really bad beliefs because it is popular, just to be frank. And because they look around and something is popular, and they just regurgitate things that they've heard other people say, they keep repeating that until they feel that their position itself is so virtuous, even though it might not even be true. It might not even be real. So I think it's important for people to speak up. But as I've continued having a lot of conversations with people, particularly on the transgender issue and stuff, I could understand why so many people are afraid or feel that they literally cannot do it, because of whatever repercussions that they might have financially for the family, etc. And I get it, and I'm sympathetic toward it. And not everybody is in a position where they can talk for a living, or whether they're talking for a living or just do it on the side. They have other means or ways that they wouldn't feel uncomfortable if they just got kind of canceled or whatever, or no one can cancel them. There's not a lot of people in that particular position. So I do really encourage people to not be afraid to speak the truth and be bold about it. But I do understand people not in that position, is what I'm saying. So Haley's reasoning, I just can't jump with that. There's got to be a different way, or better way to to get rid of the bots. But you know what? Some of these social media companies probably don't want to get rid of the bots too much because if big companies or whatever, they can use the bots and manipulate how people feel or see a position, then it works for them. It's not just like China or other companies like foreign powers manipulating how people feel about particular issues. It's not just them. So there was a statement that her campaign was asked about it, and they still kind of doubled down on it. So Byron York said, I asked the Haley campaign about the statement advocating mandatory ID and verification of all social media users. Doesn't that raise troubling issues of privacy and freedom of speech? Below is Haley's initial statement, and then the campaign's response. They said, we all know that America's enemies use anonymous bots to spread anti-American lies and sow chaos and division within our borders. Nikki believes social media companies need to do a better job of verifying users so we can track down Chinese, Iranian, and Russian bots. That's common sense. So get the issue. I suppose that's common sense that you don't want these bots to do those things, but I don't think that these other countries have shown to be a bigger threat to our free speech online than the Biden administration or people who were even within the Trump administration, when stuff was being suppressed and he was, I guess, ambivalent about it, or didn't know, or maybe knew some stuff but not to the extent that it was going on. So we can't point to that boogeyman when we know like Freddy is knocking at the door. So not that I'm not concerned about the boogeyman, but if Nikki Haley is Freddy Krueger, I'm you're gonna fight the demon who's trying to kill you right now, that is real and has the claw and the ammunition heals, so sorry, Nikki. I'm just not down with that idea. Not at all. Lastly, she was said something about it again, and this one was kind of a walk back a little bit, but let's go ahead and play this.
We need our social media companies to verify everybody so that we can get all of those.
So you're not really
bots out.
saying that people can't tweet anonymous. I mean, but that's bad enough because you see what it's doing to our kids and bullying and everything else.
Do I think life would be more civil if we were able to do that? Yes. It's the same reason why I think doxing, you should stand by what you say. But no, if you can have anonymous, I don't mind anonymous American people having free speech. Okay. What I don't like is anonymous Russians and Chinese and Iranians having free speech.
How would the conversation?
So I say that's a walk back because I played the clip of her on the Ruthless podcast with a person named Comfortably Smug. That's how I know them online. Sometimes they Comfortably Smug has some good memes and stuff, but and good other content. But and she said, you can have smug in parentheses. So it seemed pretty clear that she did want people's real names there. As they went online, but there was a lot of pushback, so I'm not surprised that there's a bit walking back here from Nikki Haley. So she's not my gal in the primary. A lot of people really like Nikki Haley. Well, not a lot of people, but there's a lot of people out there, by no means anywhere near a majority. Anywhere. I mean, she's been inching up closer to second place, but that's a bad one. That's a bad position. That's not going to do her a lot of favors at all. Another thing that was I didn't like, she seemed really too soft on on bringing Palestinian refugees, and was talking about vetting them, etc., blah blah blah. And it's like, you want to take over the internet, but you want to, because you're scared of Russian bots, but you want to just bring in refugees. So she after she got pushed back from that, she clarified. But now I that's when I was like, Mm-mm. But this is also like a red flag too. So no thanks, Nikki Haley. That's a bad idea. But anyway, doesn't mean I'm gonna like treat her wrong or anything because I'm kind of definitely not gonna vote for her. But because you guys know I don't like Vivek either, but I defended him against her at the opening of the segment. So again, everyone has a bias, but I'm gonna try to be fair to these folks, as fair as possible. Speaking of being fair, I did pose a question about Vivek the other day. How much did he personally give to the issue one? And I still don't have that number yet. I'm still trying to figure out that number. I think more people might have been like asking about it because someone, Kristen Hawkins, has been calling out the different candidates a little bit. She's in charge of Students for Life, and she was wondering why Vivek didn't say more online about it, which he didn't say anything on his TikToks about it. He didn't say anything from what I can find on his Twitter feed about it, not until like the actual day of the vote. And so someone in some kind of big Christian organization claimed that that Vivek and his wife did give a lot to it. Now I don't know. I think he said substantially. I don't know if that's substantially to me and you or substantially to a billionaire, which he is, or at least close to it. I'm still trying to figure out that number. But Vivek retweeted that and said, actions speak louder than words, which I thought was still a weird reply because you could give money, which is great. Hopefully, people could use that to fund information, lit, per commercials, ads, all that stuff. So money, you could always find a way to utilize money. But he has a lot of influence, obviously, especially him running for president. Him bringing attention to the radical nature of the bill would have helped, I would say. So saying the actions speak louder than words, like, so I might have been silent but I gave some money, I think both would have helped. So I wouldn't knock him out of, I wouldn't just give him a pass on the not saying stuff online, but I did want to at least say that some groups and Vivek acknowledged that he did give. I don't know that number yet, and if I do find out, I will let you guys know. But since I have been talking about it, I wanted to at least tell you guys that there was at least some information update on that. Anyway, moving on. There was a terrible story out this week about a boy who was from Las Vegas who died after 15 people brutally just like ghetto stomped him. According to his father, he had a friend who that he was defending, and they jumped him, and they really jumped him. So just warning here, I will show you guys the video of what happened. But it's awful. And he was like in the hospital for a few days, and his dad was, I guess, with them when he passed away. But this violence is just crazy.
Oh my God!
So yeah, there's a lot of darn kids there. There's like 15 kids there. So this was the victim who died was Jonathan Lewis Jr. And he's a white kid. And I'm gonna share the screen so you guys can at least see his photo. So his dad is raising money on a GoFundMe for him. And I don't understand. I saw a video of a person talking about it who had witnessed it or was just like, it could happen to anybody. People acting like crazy. He's like, I've heard of like 3 or 4 people jumping you, but like 15. Um, and even this NBC headline, they had a tweet um, about what happened. Like, father says this happened. People are like, there's a video of him getting attacked. Like, what do you mean his father says? There's evidence. Like, we know that's what happened. Um, after holding my son's hand in the hospital while on life support for 2 days and nights and watching his life leave his body and being shocked by the immensity and horror of my beloved boy just being beaten to death, I felt a mission to act that moved me to my core. His father, Jonathan Lewis Sr., wrote. Jonathan was a hero who tried to help a smaller child who has been being bullied, and 15 people attacked him in cowardly violence, and our beloved son was beaten to death. The teen was an aspiring artist who was kind and generous and had his whole life ahead of him, according to the website. I guess that's GoFundMe. So they have arrested 8 kids, and they're all young. And I assume they will arrest more and try them. And I already said this at the top of the hour, but I keep saying that people will say Black Lives Matter, etc. They'll debate about that line. Your life has to matter. And parents need to drill that into their children, that they need to make good decisions, not just a gang of someone else doing it. You jump into the crowd because you think it's a cheap thrill of fun. And maybe in other circumstances, someone has just been a little, maybe a lot hurt, but still alive. This young man is no longer alive. And those other men, young men, are going to be, they've been charged or they've been arrested, and they're going to be charged, and perhaps they'll be convicted for murder, but they did murder this young man. I'm not saying that it wasn't their intention to do so. It was obviously their intention to harm him. But they did beat him to death. They beat him to death. Like, what are we instilling in our kids? You have to think. You have to be brave enough to be different, to make the choice to not choose to do evil. You have to make that choice. You have to make that choice. When I see all these videos of these kids, beating up each other, in the schools, being disrespectful, people doing the flash mobs where they go in and steal a bunch of stuff. It's just so foreign to me. It's so foreign to me because within myself, I'm like, what? It's so immoral. And not only is it immoral, and I believe it's immoral because, of my background, of how I was raised, because of my faith. It's not like YOLO, live your life, live your truth, do what's best for you. It's wrong to do certain things. It's wrong to do certain things. So there's that moral center there, but there's also, I wouldn't embarrass my family like that. Make people believe I wasn't raised right. So when I see these things, I'm just floored. I can't wrap my mind around it. I can't wrap my mind around it. What are we instilling within our children? You have to instill a sense of purpose in them, good common sense. Get this, do it for the moment mentality. Just throw that out the window. You need to think about your whole life ahead of you. You need to make wise decisions today, tomorrow, the day after that, not just some kind of cheap thrill that you can get a good click, a couple of views online. You need to think, and you need to have some respect for other people's inherent value. I understand that value to each other is very subjective. You're not going to care for me the same way I care for my family, and vice versa. I understand that, but we all have an inherent value. But that's pretty much thrown out the window in order to achieve a lot of different personal gains. when people will commit crimes and other things, people throw inherent value out so they could have abortions and other stuff like that. We don't teach that. We don't believe that. Someone once told me like, oh, you seem to have the opinion that we all have inherent values. Is that because you're a Christian? If only Christians can believe that, add that to the tally, the list of reasons why you should be a Christian. If you really believe only Christians can believe in an inherent value like that, even if you don't believe that Christ died for your sins, you should at least want that to be in your core, that yes, everyone has some kind of inherent value. So my heart goes out to his family, and the crime in the country is just crazy. But to, I don't know, be in that neighborhood and know what just happened, and to feel like that other young man who said that could happen to anybody, it's pretty wild. And I know a lot of people are saying this is a hate crime. I don't know if it was a hate crime. I don't know if they're like, get white. I heard someone say get that N word. So they called it that word. But it's just insane. It's just, we have to do better for our society, guys. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. Last thing I want to mention before I let you go is there's an interview with Speaker Mike Johnson, which I don't want people to just like him because he's a Christian and talks a lot of Christian values, and I don't want people to dislike him just because he talks a lot of Christian values. I want people to judge him on his performance and stuff. But this particular interview that I'm going to show you guys happens to be about his Christian values. And so he was asked about him praying on the floor and separation of church and state, which I don't know, it seemed like out of all the things you could ask in our world going on right now, why is this the thing? And so I think he had a good answer, and I just wanted to play it and talk about it a bit.
You had been sworn in. It appeared that you were praying on the floor of Congress with a number of other congressmen. And there is a question about the separation of church and state. We often talk on this show about folks, about whether religion should play a role inside a company, whether people should be allowed to pray inside a company. There's one thing to pray outside and to have your faith, and there's a great importance in that. But how do you think about that, and how do you think about the public perception of that?
Listen, faith, our deep religious heritage and tradition, is a big part of what it means to be an American. When the founders set this system up, they wanted a vibrant expression of faith in the public square because they believed that a general moral consensus and virtue was necessary to maintain this grand experiment in self-governance that we created, a government of, by, and for the people. We don't have a king in charge. We don't have a middleman. So we've got to keep morality amongst us so that we have accountability. And so they wanted faith to be a big part of that. The separation of church and state is a misnomer. People misunderstand it. Of course, it comes from a phrase that was in a letter that Jefferson wrote. It's not in the Constitution. And what he was explaining is they did not want the government to encroach upon the church, not that they didn't want principles of faith to have influence on our public life. It was exactly the opposite. Washington said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And John Adams came next and he said, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. They knew that it would be important to maintain our system. And that's why I think we need more of that. Not an establishment of any national religion, but we need everybody's vibrant expression of faith because it's such an important part of who we are as a nation.
Amen. So there was a debate that happened a couple days ago from a secular humanist atheist and a Christian apologist. And I don't know the Christian apologist. The first time I ever heard him was in this debate the debate wasn't last night. I watched it last night. And I watched it because I watched Trent Horn talk about it. Trent Horn did the debate with Destiny on the whatever podcast about abortion. That was really good. If you didn't watch it, it was like 3 hours long, but it was well worth it. I think Trent did a really good job. So it was Matt Dillahunty versus Andrew, just says Andrew on the title, but it was with Modern Day Debate. And so I got to do a separate video about it. It was pretty incredible. But Dilhaughty made a big portion of his opening about Mike Johnson and his Christian beliefs, and he talked about the separation church and state, and he's like, and he validated that it by quoting uh, um, this philosopher or a Christian apologist who's been debunked or something like that. But his view, what he expressed about, at least in that clip, about the separation of church and state, um, because the atheists complain about the idea of separation of church and state being that it's not meant to keep the government away from God, but the God away from us, essentially, as we practice our religions and stuff. And that idea is true. You can just go to what Johnson referenced, to the letter that Jefferson had in exchange with the Danbury Baptist Association. In my book, of course, Guys Blatantly Against Abortion, I do have a chapter on separation of church and state, because people say that all the time, but when people bring it up, they don't seem to be aware anything about it. So you guys can go look up the exchange between them. But in England they had, particular church, and so there was other denominations who were not favored. So people didn't want that to be the case in America, and they were scared that the fact that religion was even mentioned in the Constitution at all, that somehow meant that government gave that right. So Jefferson was just reiterating that no, that's not the case. That's not what we meant. And that you do have like these rights that are just inherent, and that there is supposed to be like a wall of separation, but that wall of separation isn't that we're so afraid of religious people praying on the floor or something. It's about like not us imposing some kind of religion on everyone else. So it's you guys can go, well, if you read my book, you read that section, but you guys can actually go look up the letters that he's referencing if you don't know what he's talking about or haven't read it before. But the interesting thing about the conversation that the atheist had, and I watched it because he just rage quit. So he mentioned Johnson was a big part of his opening. He talked about like the humanist secularist opinion, and he talked about the debate was about Christian ethics versus like human secularism or whatever. He basically also said that Christianity is bad because it has bad views on homosexuality and LGBT issues, other stuff like that. And so Andrew was like, I'm just going to grant you your worldview and say like, okay, let's say that God doesn't exist. The sky daddy is, not real. We should still pretend that it is because our ethics are better because we aspire to truth. And you don't have any kind of moral standard of truth or whatever. And then he went into the idea that all these people believe that of a man since he's a woman, and then you have to agree with that. And if you don't affirm them, then they will perhaps unalive themselves. And this, we are affirming lies, and that's insane. And so he was just very firm on that. And the atheist is dating a trans woman. So he just wouldn't even dignify the conversation at all. So he, like, after the opening from the Christian, he's like, I'm done. And he just left. And and then Andrew like addressed the crowd of atheists, and they were like, you are so mean, you're so mean. And the atheist actually called the Christian, a jack bleep. And he's like, he didn't, the only line that he said that was like meant to be like insulting, I suppose, was when he told him to say goodbye to your good night to your husband or something, which obviously would get under his skin because he's dating someone who believes that they're a woman. And so people were like, that was so mean. He's like, why is it mean? He's like, or why are you offended about something that's true? Like, if it's not true, then it's a lie. You have to acknowledge that things are, that there's, that it's a lie or whatever. It was just interesting seeing the atheist rage quit, and then it was interesting seeing the atheist in the room react to the Christian. I thought not only did the atheist who rage quit lose, but I also thought the atheist in the room also embarrassed themselves as well with their reaction. It kind of reminded me a bit of when uh Ben Shapiro was talking about Zoe Tur and was like, "Why are you mainstreaming delusion?" And Zoe Tur was like, well, "You're gonna go home in an ambulance," and people are like, "How dare you say that, Ben?" And it's just like this man just put his hands on Ben and threatened violence against him, and you guys are like, "Ben Shapiro, you're so mean." I'm like, Ben. It was so bizarre, but it was worth watching. Very interesting indeed. That they were so mad about the trans issue, and they're like, "This didn't even have anything to do with it. This debate isn't about trans issues." No, it was about truth and ethics and whose worldview is better. And Andrew's like, "We aspire to the truth, so our ethic is better because if everything is about the human condition and just improving the human condition, who gets to decide that?" And if you all decide that improving the human condition is some kid injecting himself full of hormones and chopping off his dick, then reject that is a moral way, an ethical way for society to function. So they just could not take it. So I just wanted to put that out there. um because it's worth seeing. But I think I'll do a separate video for that, and talk about it and show some clips because it's worth you guys seeing more. I had fun listening to it. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs a stream around my website. So if you guys can, I appreciate if you can support in that sort of way. Check out different merch that we have available at the store, including some of my books that I have. They're all available on Amazon, but a good way to find them all if you just go to the website, the merchandise page, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website. So I have 17 that are published, but I have 2 nonfiction books and the rest are fiction, ranging from children's chapter books to like young /new adult. So go ahead and check it out. And thank you guys. And obviously you guys can tell that I'm a little under the weather, but hopefully I'm up to tip top shape by tomorrow. But there's some things going on in the outside world. So if there's any reason why I have to abruptly not do the show, just keep track of I'll announce it on YouTube or Facebook and stuff. But if you could just keep my family in your prayers, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not a believer, just well wishes and all that stuff. God still hears you. Anyway, God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.